And I want to thank Sunir. I think he's not here in the audience, and the SaaS Connect board who gave me the opportunity to come here and share some of the lessons I learned. This all started last year fall sometime. I was talking to Sunir and telling him about Sales Intel, that, hey, I just started this company, Sales Intel, and we provide B2B contact data and intelligence so that your sales and marketing team can go and prospect better and get more business. And he was like, but I thought that's what you did in CircleBack. He's like, yeah, we sort of did it. We did it through partnership. Our name was not there, but pretty much everybody in the data industry at the back end was using our data, right? So if you're using any of the big provider of B2B data, the chances are at the back end it was our data, right? So I will walk you through my journey, right? I'm sure many times you've seen this slide, this picture, where your plan is to go from point A to point B. To the world, it looks like a straight line, right? But the reality, we all are entrepreneurs here. The reality is the path is never a straight line. And actually, you learn more from your failures than from your successes, right? If in this picture you're successful, all you learn is to bike, maybe an uphill biking, right? But when you go through the challenges, you not only learn biking through different paths, but you learn the canoeing and then hiking and everything else along with that. So I had two early successes in my entrepreneurial journey. Small. I started a services company around a federal consulting. We grew large. I started a mobile for higher education platform, which we sold. And I thought, all right, here I am. I started two companies. Both were successful. So everything I touch will become gold, right? With that confidence, I start my next company. And this time I said, what? We are going to build $1 billion business. And how? Right in the middle of DC, we start a consumer internet company to solve the contact problem, the address book problem for business users like all of us here, right? And that the company was CircleBack. That company had the promise to be $1 billion company, right? But I take the responsibility that we screwed it up, and I'll share some of the lessons learned from that journey. But many of you have gone and pitched to the VCs, right, for fundraising, and they always tell you what they're looking for $1 billion promise, for $1 billion company. They're looking for a large market, right? They're looking for a well-known problem. They're looking for a great team and many other things. So at CircleBack, we had everything. Raise your hands if you think you have a perfect address book, like, your contact data is up to date and you don't have any duplicates and you don't have 3 different copies, of your contact data, and you get all these business cards and they get into your address book, right? Anyone? None, right? So that was a problem. And every VC that you go to talk to, they say, yep, I have a problem, right? So we knew that it was a big problem. Everybody had it. There wasn't an effective solution for that. And we had assembled an amazing team, right? A data scientist from MIT, to the product team from Amazon, to the board from Google. We had an amazing team. And, we raised $30 million. And you would think, we would build $1 billion company. But unfortunately, that business never took off. The business of building the consumer internet business just did not take off. And many would say it was a failure. To me, it was a plan A that didn't work out. So let's figure out what is the plan B. But along the way, we learned lots of lessons. So I'm going to share some nuggets. Hopefully, you'll take some points away. There were 8 lessons that were learned from this business. We just, we fell, but we got up, dusted off, and started the next journey. But the lessons learned along the way was ecosystem is very, very important, right? I'm from Washington, D.C. metro area. We were trying to build a consumer internet company in Washington, D.C. where the ecosystem just didn't exist, whether it's talent or partnerships or your VC community, the mindset of them, it just did not exist. And it's not an accident that most of the internet companies, consumer internet companies, you'd call it like Facebooks of the world, LinkedIn, and then Twitter or Instagram, they're all, started and flourished here in the Bay Area, right, in the San Francisco area, because the ecosystem exists, right? People understand, you have the talent, you have the VCs, and you have all the partnerships that you need to make those companies successful. I was at the wrong right idea, but the wrong place, right? My first 2 companies, if you look at it, government consulting companies, within 2-mile radius, I had every client. Right? Second, in the education, Washington D.C. metro area is the capital for education. You have Blackboard, you have DataTel, which just became Ellucian, right? Every single education company, like 70% of them, are in the D.C. metro area. So the ecosystem existed, we were successful. But in this case, the ecosystem was not quite there for us to be successful. Second thing is, we raised $30 million in different tranches, right? We were at Series B. The idea was, CircleBack as a consumer company, people will use all their CircleBack app to manage their address book, right? And they were contributing a tons of data to our central cloud. It was based on the Waze model, just like Waze. We use Waze, and we are going, on 101 or any traffic on any highway, and passively Waze is sending the signal to the central server, and therefore you can say, okay, you know what, there's no traffic, I can navigate intelligently. And actively, few % of the Waze users say there's an accident or there's a traffic police, and we all get the optimum path out of it. CircleBack was built on the same sort of model, active-passive crowdsourcing model, and as we did not get the scale early on of the internet company to be successful. You need to get to first 10 million in short period of time. We had a million to 2 took longer than the first million. So we weren't quite there with the hockey stick curve, but we had a pressure to start generating some revenue so that we can get the growth capital. So we went to market prematurely with not enough data. We produced a product and went to market, which was a big mistake. The early signs were positive for the product that we rolled out, and based on just the promise, not in the delivery, just based on the promise that the same problem that I face as a consumer, that my address book data is out of date and I have duplicates. I'm sure in your CRM system, businesses face the same problems, right? They have out-of-date context, the contexts are duplicate, your CRM marketing data is a mess, right? How do you keep up with that rate of change? So based on promise, we were able to get some customers, and we were able to get Series C, growth capital, but we were still experimenting. So the lesson learned from there is label is very important, right? We had East Coast VCs. We told them we are raising Series C. For them, Series C is all about growth, but we were still experimenting on the product. So when the product came to market, which was prematurely, we came to market, and the data was not quite there, the depth of the data was not there, our revenue wasn't tracking, right? Therefore, the investors, once again, from our East Coast side, these investors were upset. Like, hey, we were expecting this kind of growth. So if you go big, you can go home. So we kind of said, all right, we raised Series C. We prematurely came to market. Let's grow. Let's put a growth engine behind it. And we hired 20 sales and marketing people, right? In hindsight, it was all like very, very stupid. But in that moment, you have to hit the numbers. Like, how am I going to hit the numbers? You hire a chief revenue officer from this Fortune 500 companies, and the guy comes in and say, all right, this Excel sheet, I need to hit $10 million by end of Q3. I need these many people, right? When you have money in the bank, you make those mistakes. And when you do that prematurely, when the growth foundation is not there, you can't build a company effectively. And look, I was very fortunate to work with some of the great investors in the industry. The challenge was, good people don't always make the good fit, right? These guys never had invested in a B2C company, right? So everybody wants to be part of Facebook, just like an entrepreneur. VCs also want to be part of the next Facebook, next LinkedIn, but then they have never done it before. They don't know what it takes to build the next LinkedIn or the next Facebook. So the investor fit is very, very important. Who you pick as your investor is very, very important. And the next part is your board. Sometimes you have an option or a choice to pick who you put on your board. Sometimes you don't, right? If it's your investor board, then you don't have much of a choice, right? But in case of independent board members, you have a choice. And lesson learned, I won't go into too much of a detail here about my story, but I would just leave you with the nugget that if you're assembling a board, just do that very, very carefully, because if it's not done right, it's like giving a sword to a monkey, right? For it can kill you and your company. So very, very important point here that we learned about building the board. And the next point is, we were so heads down and we were so stubborn that we are going to build the next billion-dollar company by hook or crook, right? We're hovering around 2-3 million users, and here LinkedIn has like 150 million and 200 million like users, that we did not see what was happening outside of the four walls in our office, if you will, right? We were providing our data, which was the gold standard, although we didn't have the scale of LinkedIn, was gold standard, and all the companies around us, like, they were flourishing, right? The companies that were doing $2-3 million in revenue became 20, 30, 40 million off of our data, right? And we didn't care to structure those partnerships where we get the upside of that, right? And some of those companies have become now worth $200-400 million. And I'm sure recently you have seen there's been consolidation in the ecosystem, right? Where companies are buying each other, merging, private equity groups are coming together. And we just totally missed that, because we started a company to build and solve the consumer address book problem. And while we were providing all this data that we were investing so much money to the ecosystem, we just totally missed that market, right? So biggest mistake. And that brings me to the partnership, right? We structured about 26 different partnerships, right, where our data was going in there, and that was not the primary revenue source for us. Ultimately, we thought, when you have big data, we'll figure out how to make revenue. But these companies came to us, and, hey, you are sitting on all this data. How can we utilize this database? So the 3 points I will leave you with as far as partnership is concerned. If you go to too small of a company, right, they don't have a lot to offer. They're struggling just as you are struggling to make things happen, right? If you go to a larger company, like we spend a lot of time with Verizon, right, trying to put our product on their network, our product on their platform, you end up spending lots of cycles, right? And you may not get anything. And then every board meeting you go, and I'm talking to Verizon, that may give you a satisfaction that you're talking to a big company, or even if you get a deal done, unless there's some teeth there, you don't get anything out of those deals. And the third thing is, with these small to mid-sized companies who were small to mid-sized at that time, we were able to get these partnerships done, but those partnerships were not structured where we receive the brand value, right? So with all those lessons learned, last year I started Sales Intel, right? We structured CircleBack as a company. CircleBack is still a brand. We put the dream of building a billion-dollar company for hundreds of millions of consumers to use CircleBack app. We kept CircleBack app restricted for business users. Now 4.2 million users use CircleBack app, right? Business users use their apps to keep their contacts up to date. 1.2 million salespeople use our app to scan the business cards in conferences like this. Next month we are releasing the scanner for these badges, right? So those 1.2 million users will be able to scan the badge and store the data into CRM system, store the data into marketing automation system, store the data in your sales enablement system like Outreach and Salesloft of the world, right? And they are actually paying for it, right? And on this other side, we have a B2B brand, Sales Intel, right, which competes with some of the partners that we had in the past. So I went and restructured or terminated most of our partnership deals Q4 of last year, and some were till February, right? Of 26, 4 partners opted in to work with us on our terms, where anytime they use our data in their portal, they say, this data is powered by Sales Intel, right? So we get the value out of it. So we have a referral partnership as well as the integration partnership. They can sell our data to their customers, which is very well integrated through our APIs, but we need to get the brand recognition, right? That was number one. Number two, anytime a end client needs more than what they could get from their portal, they will refer it to us. We are pretty generous. We give anywhere from 10% to 30%, depending upon how much volume of business comes to us. So we were very generous in giving the value back to them. Out of 26, we kept only 4 partnerships. Everything else we just terminated, right? And as we terminated those deals, so one of the examples I like to give is we had a let's say partnership with somebody who would give us this is rounded up to $100,000 a year, right? These guys upped it to $500,000. We said we are not doing it. Upped it to $1 million a year in exchange for our data. That we knew what we had was very, very valuable, and we said, look, we will do the deal at $100,000, but all we need is our brand recognition, right? People should know where this data is coming from. So I'm very excited about Sales Intel. It's been 7 months total. We went from 0 to $1 million in 5.5 months in our revenue. And part of it is, I've come from the ecosystem and the data already existed. This is a new brand. We provide 2 things here. You come to our portal, and for your sales and marketing teams, you get high quality B2B contact data. How does this become high quality? Our apps are feeding the data to the central system. We have an AI engine that has 7 patterns that processes all this data to create about 70 to 80% accurate. And then we have 200% research team between Knoxville, Tennessee, and India that is processing this data on the web, on email, and on the phone call to make sure that when your sales and marketing teams get this data, it is pristine quality, right? And we have multiple integrations with Salesforce, with HubSpot, with Salesloft. You can also use our Chrome plugin, so anytime you're on LinkedIn, you can see the contact of a person, contact information of the person. Right? Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Anyone have any questions? Let me bring this over.
Thanks.
What's the biggest thing you're doing differently? I mean, obviously, new brand, a little bit different go-to-market strategy, but if there was one thing you could boil this down to.
Our own brand. Our own brand. We are going to market directly to the customer with our own brand.
I want to piggyback off of that question on branding. So how do you figure out what the value of your brand is? Like, in our case, we're B2B.
Yeah.
We don't white label anything except the URL, but many customers don't even see the URL. So, like, how do you figure out what the value of that brand is for the customer where you want to show it?
Well, when our brand is shown, the customer knows the data is coming from there, right? So our brand is at top of mind for the customer, right? Because ultimately, we want to make sure that our complete product is not part of our partner product, right? We give a taste of our data in the partner portal or in the partner product. But ultimately, when the customer needs for the entire go-to-market team, the data set, we want the customer to come to us.
Well, let me ask you this differently. So would you offer, if I come to you and say, I'll give you $1 million, I don't want your brand there, and I'll offer you $100,000 and I want your brand there, would that be an offer on the table for your customers from you?
No, we don't give them an option where our brand is not there, even if the price is $1 million. Because what happens in our case is they cannibalize our customers. Right? So I may get $1 million upfront, right? But I'm going to lose $10 million in the marketplace. Right? Because once they have the data, they can just give it away as part of their product. And I'll give you an example. In my last company, Dub Labs, we had 3 partnerships with AT&T, Verizon, and Datatel. Datatel is a student information system, it's an ERP system. And our partnership was where Datatel will white label the platform, right? And the CEO is a very astute guy. He's been there for 26 years. And he's like, Manoj, what do you need? And here I am bootstrapping this company. I was like, I need $1 million guarantee in this partnership. He's like, all right, done, for 7 years. So we did a $7 million deal. $500,000 of the first year's $1 million he wired upfront at this time of the signatures, right? What he did was very clever. He had 650 clients. He made our product, which is mobile for higher education, right? It's like, I'm selling ERP system for 250,000 and above, right, to the marketplace, and there's 650 schools that are using my product. He put mobile as part of the renewal for just a 20% of the cost of the mobile, right? And all of a sudden, year one, he generated $2.6 million in revenue. Beautiful model. All of a sudden, 600 schools, they had to opt out as part of the renewal notice. They had to opt out if they didn't want the mobile product. We made about a 1.3 of the 2.6 million in revenue. But in the hindsight, at that time it was great. We exited that company. But one of the offer came from them, and they wanted to discount the complete customer base that they brought to the table, right? Because they thought this was our customer base. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Like if we could have generated $2.6 million of revenue from 10% of those customer base.
I'll probably come and follow up with you in person.
Yeah, would love to. I'm here for.
Because this is something that I'm struggling with in my company, where we have franchisors coming to us and saying, we will pay you white label fee up front.
Yep.
But you cannot tell any of the franchisors that we're using your product.
Yep.
So we are struggling with this internally to figure out what to do in those situations. So.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation. I can't tell you some of those 26 players. one of my angel investors actually was here at the conference. And he's like, I just bought data from this company. I was like, okay. So I spent $900. And I pulled him aside. I was like, at the back end, you're using my data. You have access to this portal as an investor at no cost. So I totally understand why they're asking you not to put the name. They're restricting you from disclosing that the software at the back end is yours. It's hard. It's hard to go direct because you have to build a go-to-market team, right? Which we are building right now. We have a 4% AE team, 4 STRs, your demand gen marketing. So it's just expensive, but I think it's worth it in the longer term. It's worth it. Okay.
Partially answered the question, but are you going direct, partner, hybrid?
Yeah, we are going very selective partners, but 90% of our business today is direct. Those 4 of the 26 partners that remained, we are going through those through partnership. But in those partnerships, we are very clear. A, you have to put our name in there that this data is powered by Sales Intel, and B, after a certain usage, the client has to come to us, and C, the deal has to be done on our paper. Because when you exit, I have had experiences in the last 2 times. When you exit your company, the buyer is looking at full control, right, on the contracts. And if you tell them you have control only on 60% of the contract value, then they discount the remaining 40%. And depending upon your cash position and how fast you want to exit, you just leave that much money on the table.
Okay, fantastic.
Any other
Thank you so
questions?
much,
Great.
Manoj.
Great. Thanks, you guys.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it.